car bombing in Kiev. We'll talk about the ongoing crisis in Ukraine with an American pastor who's doing something about it. That's coming up on today's Hot Zone.
This is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hey folks, you know there are lots and lots of places around the world where there are conflicts happening that the media just sort of eventually forgets about and moves on to the next thing. But for the people that are in those areas, they're still very real. Well, the Ukraine is one of those. This conflict started back in 2013 with the Maidan Square massacre, and then in February 2014 when Russia sort of annexed the Crimea, and that started off a conflict, indeed a war, that's going on to this day. Check out this footage that I obtained from just a few days ago where a Russian operative is trying to plant a car bomb on somebody's car in Kiev, but the car bomb goes off prematurely. Here we see the guy walking his dog, supposedly, but he actually goes up to this car and tries to get underneath it and place the bomb. But the bomb goes off as he's under there. Apparently, the guy survived. He lost his arms or something in the process. But this just goes to show there's still a lot of violence happening over there that we don't necessarily hear about in the news today. So I want to bring in a good friend of mine to talk about it. His name is John Lowe. Pastor Lowe, you just came back from the Ukraine, and I was really hoping to make it over there with you, but didn't work out this trip. Maybe next time. Tell me a little bit about what you saw over there.
Well, we've been going to Ukraine for years, and as you know, the past 5 years they've been in war. There was the Liberty Square shooting where they placed snipers up on the roof that was Russian influenced, and over 100 people were killed during that. There's been a huge migration because of the war where people have had to leave the area that's Russian occupied, which has created all kinds of stress on the infrastructure of the government and other communities, and a lot of people going to Poland and, Eastern or Western Europe. This particular trip, we were involved in making sure that we have a container leaving actually like today or the next couple of days, so that in the winter there'll be some food and clothing there. During April 3rd and the 4th, there were, during the ceasefire, 6 supposedly illegal rocket launches. And the reason I say illegal is because September 2014, they signed an agreement that they would not use certain rocket launchers against each other. Mm-hmm. All 6 of those firings were rocket launchers that weren't supposed to be used by Russia or Ukraine, either one. And 6 Ukrainian soldiers were killed. There's 7,000 kilometers that are landmine saturated. If you remember Princess Diana and the work that she did with landmines being removed, like in Afghanistan and other places that Russia had occupied, you can imagine, you don't know where you can step for 6,000 square kilometers. Wow. Because it's so landmine saturated. Now, yes, there's signs. Don't get out of the car. Don't walk down the road. Don't cross the field. But, they had 500 civilians killed, and 123 of those were children. And a lot of other people, of course, maimed for the rest of their life.
Wow. Well, so the kind of work that you were doing there, you were talking in prisons, I know, and doing some marriage stuff. Is that right?
Yes, sir. We were there for 10 days. We did 2 marriage conferences. We did a men's event, a ladies' event. We did prison. We purchase some windows to put in a surgical room, which, if you're doing surgery in the wintertime, you'd like to have the room at least comfortable. And they couldn't do any surgeries in this particular prison operating facility because it was too doggone cold. And we've taken, 500 blankets there so that the inmates who are in occupied territory, so they're Ukrainian citizens that Russia has authority and control over, and says we're not going to be responsible because they're Ukraine's problem, but they're in occupied territory, so Ukraine can't do anything. And so they're literally at the mercies of their friends and their families, aiding and helping in any capacity that they can.
So you're saying that the people in these prisons have kind of fallen between the cracks because they're in Russian occupied territory, but Russia won't take care of them. But Ukraine can't take care of them because they're in Russian occupied territory. And so you're talking about like any comfort items, food, toothpaste, toilet paper, stuff like that. Or you mean even the food that they eat during the day, they're required, or the only way they can get that is through their families?
Well, the prisons have gotten a little creative, and they've developed businesses. They partner with local communities and cities in Ukraine. For instance, one bus line sends all their buses there to be restored. And so they can do a turnaround in a week, strip that bus down, paint that bus, redo the leather, rebuild the motor, put new tires on it, ship it back out the door within a week. And they're making money to feed themselves that way. So you can't go to these prisons and just not do anything. They all have some type of occupation, which in one way I think that's a good thing. But the other thing is if they don't have if that business fails, then there's no food coming in until they get something else going. One prison's water filtration system was knocked out due to bombing. And so there's no way to filter water. So they have, like T-shirts, white T-shirts filtering the water. So we bought 70 water filters with, 25-gallon drums so that they could filter their water throughout the facility and have some to be changed over till we get there next time.
Wow, that's amazing. And who is administering the prison? Are they Russians or are they Ukrainians?
Oh, they're Ukrainians, which is amazing. Yeah, it's in Russian occupied territory, but they let the Ukrainian employees of that prison come through their, barriers and checkpoints and those kind of things and do their job of taking care or watching or supervising the inmates there. And then they have to leave, the area.
Wow.
Which is always precarious because of the landmines everywhere.
So what are the living conditions like then for the people in those prisons? And are they violent? Are they dangerous?
Well, again, I haven't had access to some of the most violent areas there, but I got a tour through 3 complete prisons, and of course they were thrilled that I was there. And I'm walking with what we would call the warden, the head commander. And they all dressed in military-style uniforms, including the head commander. And the guys were thrilled. I'm solving problems. I'm a hero basically walking in there. I'm bringing water. We're bringing food. We're bringing blankets. So everybody's thrilled to see us, but the living conditions are rough. For instance, winter's coming up, and a lot of those men, all they have is sandals. And they don't have boots. They don't have shoes. They don't have appropriate jackets or clothing. Some of them are walking around in what I kind of call pajama pants. They're a real lightweight style sweatpants or something like that their relative gave them. Their numbers, we see people incarcerated here with their DOC number on a particular prison uniform. They're sewn on a T-shirt or, a polo shirt, something like that. Whatever they're wearing, they sew their DOC number on that shirt, and they're dressed like civilians because the only clothing they have is what their friends and their families provide for them. Nothing's provided by the state or the government.
So tell me how you got into this. I mean, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what is it that gave you a heart for prisons, first of all, and tell me a little bit about your ministry.
Well, thank you. We live in Warsaw, Indiana. Got a little affiliation there because of Warsaw with Poland, but I've been doing prison ministry for 33 years. My brother and I were into a variety of things as we were growing up. He went to prison for 11 years. I never went to prison, so God gave me a lifetime sentence of doing prison ministry. And then he's able to jump me across the pond, where I've ministered in different places through Europe, particularly the Ukraine, the last few years. And some of these prisons, I know I'm the only American that's ever walked in the door. And, there's ministries like Joyce Myers that provides biblical materials and studies, and other organizations. Billy Graham's organization also has provided materials. So I got started because I had a mentor. He had escaped from Ukraine as a child under the Nazi occupation when, Germany was coming into Ukraine and Russia at that time. His family got captured. He spent 2 years in prison camps as a child, standing in those lines where every other person was shot. They finally made their way to America, and he grew up, here then as a late teenager and early 20s. He became a police officer. He became a school teacher. He became a college professor, and then he became a minister. And that's significant in his story because all those people were very intricate when he first got here to the United States of America. And then 16 years ago, he said, "John, I need you to go to Ukraine with me and help me win that nation." And so we've been going 3, 4, 5 times a year ever since. And the prison ministry is just, I've been asking for years and trying to build relationships and get those doors to open because I have a calling there. Because I didn't go, God gave me a lifetime sentence. And, so this coming November, we're going to be doing what I call a prison tour. You know how rock bands will put all the cities where they do a tour? We're going to have all the cities where we're going to go to prisons and go minister the gospel there. So that's what we do. We take Jesus right in, unashamedly share the gospel with them, and, try to bring some kind of practical application as well. Like they say, give a guy a fish before you, teach him about the gospel, and then teach him how to fish. Well, that's what we're doing there. We're trying to bring something practical like water, clothing, bed clothes, something like that, and then preach the gospel to them.
I have often said that as I travel around to these hot zones around the world, you can help people for a minute or for a day by giving them a little money. And very often that's really what they need, because you're literally saving their lives by giving them some warm socks or some, something to eat, some medical care. And so those things are important, but you're never going to change the underlying problem. You can only put a Band-Aid on it unless you give these people Jesus, because right. Unless you can change their culture to that which in which people treat others like they would like to be treated, and that in which people may have something bigger than themselves to believe in. They're going to continue on with that mirror image of the golden rule, which is do unto others before they do unto you, right? And having it sounds like to me you're going right to the front lines, right, where that's needed the most among these hardened criminals.
Well, that's true with those guys. And then also, with the military people, I've gone through those zones where the Russians were here and the Russians were there. And I went another 4 or 5 kilometers inside that area to meet with soldiers and preach the gospel to them. And there's certainly a whole lot of truth in changing the world one soul at a time and teaching them those biblical principles of, loving others as you would want to be loved. And then the reality of 82 years of having no God in the culture.
Yeah.
See, we take for granted here in the United States of America a lot of just things that we do every day, not realizing that's on the foundation of the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ in this country. Like marriage, just the way we treat one another as husbands and wives and families. That was totally eliminated under communism. And so just go in there and teach the basic things of, how do you care for your wife? How do you care for your husband and your children? And then, take that a step further and go through the neighborhood and go through the community and go to your nation. Corruption is a huge problem in Ukraine. Absolutely huge. It's probably the number one issue of everything.
Yeah, for sure. The thing that I noticed in traveling around Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union is that two things. Number one, that it's very apparent that communism and socialism cannot address that basic fundamental human need to try to better my own situation. They try to say, no, you are nothing. The whole community, the whole society over there was designed to make the individual less, to make the individual nothing. Only the state mattered. Only the nation mattered. Only communism mattered in our ideology. And you mean nothing. And, it's funny because I had somebody the other day that said, well, that's what Christianity does. They say, no, you have to be the least, not the greatest. And I said, no, wait. Christianity is 100% different than that, because it tells you that you are the magnum opus of God's creation. You are a child of God. You're the best thing he ever made. And because of that, you should be magnanimous and generous to other people, because you have the wealth of the Most High God at your disposal. And that is the complete mirror image of what communism and socialism are like, because it speaks to that deepest need of saying that I want to be somebody. And so it's so cool that to see the ministry that you guys are doing over there and have been doing for so many years. And I am bound to determine I'm going to get over there and join you one of these days in it.
Well, we would love to have you, that's for sure. And it's, as you know, as you travel the world, and thankfully you're not naive to a lot of these things because of the things you've been, the places you've seen, the people that you work with. But it's also hard for people to imagine who hasn't seen, they've not been exposed to the stuff that you've seen. And so I appreciate the opportunity to share that with you and whoever watches this podcast, that there's a whole world out there that doesn't know what they know and hasn't been touched by that kind of love that you're talking about, that you're the very reason. It's answering the biggest questions people have. Who am I? What is my life about? Who loves me? And why should I love and care about anybody else besides myself? And the gospel answers all those issues that are deep, deep, deep questions in the heart. Yeah. And communism and socialism have no answers whatsoever for those questions.
That's right. And, that's kind of what this podcast was started for, is that when people watch the news and they see all this bad news around the world, and they say, why should I care about Ukraine? I mean, I can't do anything about that. And it's just depressing to hear the bad news that comes out of there. But through this podcast, we want to enable people through the magic of social media and the new technology that's available to us to be able to not only see these people's stories, but to reach through the news and help them in their time of need, and to say, wow, I did something about that. And that's what you're doing. So how can people join you in what you're doing in Ukraine?
Well, if they want to help with that, they can just send an offering a variety of ways. We have a website, www.ihavenewlife.com. You can go on there and hit the Give tab. That's very simple, safe, and secure. They want to write a check in, they can send it to 744 South, County Road 325 East, Warsaw, Indiana, 46582. And I certainly request and ask for their prayers. I mean, there's times like yourself, I'm in places that other people don't go. I mean, when I go into the prison, one of the things I do is I walk among the guys. I'm walking in their dorms. I'm walking right up to them and shaking their hands and hugging their necks. And there's not been one commander that hasn't said to me, nobody does that. Mm-hmm. None of them do it. The employees, no minister that comes in there, even Ukrainian, walks in there and makes contact, eyeball to eyeball, hand to hand, heart to heart, and, gives a guy a hug. But see, I've seen the change that what love will do in my life, and I know love will do the same thing for them. And I'm no pansy by any means, but I do know that love is the strongest force in the world.
Absolutely, without a doubt. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast with us. Folks, if you want to support Pastor Lowe and what he's doing over there, it's www.ihavenewlife.com. Is it .com or .org?
I think it's .com.
Okay, and if not, it'll be it's .org. Thanks for coming on with us. And folks, you've been watching the Hot Zone podcast, and we'll see you back here again tomorrow. Thanks for being with us. I'm Chuck Holton.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.